Hello there, weary traveler. Welcome to the inn. Sit, rest your feet. Why, it's a long journey on the road to Tarvalon. Have a cup of tea, or maybe a frothy ale. The light. Why, you're just in time for the entertainment. Here are your hosts, Tracy and Amber.
I hope I'm not too loopy today. I feel like...
No, I feel the same way.
Okay, good. I'm like, why aren't my words and my brain lined up?
So,
you want to do spoilers?
Spoilery musings and observations.
It was nonstop. Like, when I was reading through Ravens, I wrote down, like, on my little cards that I always write in, I wrote down Ravens, better known as foreshadowing out the ass. Like, I even hand wrote it in all caps because it was just like, wow. But it was, I don't know, it was, especially coming back to Egwene after just reading her death was momentary tear, you know, like
traumatic.
Yes, but also almost healing, you know, like the story doesn't end. I can like still go back and do her adventure again. But with this one, like, she's this little tiny 9-year-old. I mean, Egwene is always mentioned as being petite, so I can't imagine she wasn't petite as a child. And she's carrying around a bucket of water that probably weighs half as much as she does, but she's like, I'm gonna be the best water carrier ever. Like, this is what should be written on a monument to Egwene, is I can do it better. And it's funny that I should say that because that's what like Aiden has decided as my personal motto. Like, everything I look at, he's like, Mom, you're always like, I could do that better. And I'm like, not with everything. I wouldn't be able to tell someone how to farm something. We both know I'm a terrible gardener. But some things, yeah, I could do that better. Her bucking of tradition in this is so good because it starts out so young, where she's asking the question, why should we do stuff just because we've always done it that way before? And that just carries through for her with everything she encounters throughout her entire sadly short life. You know what I mean? Like, she's always like, the minute she gets out of the Two Rivers, what does she do? She takes her hair out of her braid. You know? She's been waiting for that since 9. She's talking about that she wants to be the youngest person in the village history to get her hair braided. You know? Like, she wanted it. And then she was like, I guess I don't need to. I don't have to follow this. I don't have to do this. The practicing of level looks starts here, I feel like, because she's like trying to make a little boy who's walking past her feel bad for the way that he's behaving. And she's like, maybe I'm not doing it right. I need to practice that. Sound familiar? And then it's just Egwene the child versus Egwene the Amarylline Sea, the Flame of Tarvalon, that last moment with her where she is just light itself, avenging everything that has gone wrong. It was just this really, it was an emotional moment for me. I'm not gonna lie. And then the other thing was just the appearance of the Ravens, and we've kind of talked about that. And I said earlier, the Ravens are just looking at the men and the boys. So foreshadowing, they're looking for the Dragon Reborn here in the Two Rivers, roughly 8 years before they actually find.
Yeah, it's really interesting that that's added in there, because you would think, okay, if they're already looking, I mean, I feel like they would be like, well, duh, it's him, you know, and like act sooner, right? I mean,
do you think so?
Yeah, because as we know from New Spring, this has been going on for a while, and they know a little bit of what Moiraine knows. so they're looking, and I just feel like Rand sticks out like a sore thumb, and it's like you said, foreshadowing. It's the very first thing that we learn about him. He's like, well, I don't look like Madame much. Maybe we both have broad shoulders, but that's it.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, in my mind, there was never any question that he's not the important one, that he's not, you know, the main person that we need to be focused on.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, maybe they're just keeping a watchful eye, these ravens.
You know what? While you were saying it, that's what I kind of started thinking too, because that's Moraine's journey too, is like looking in the places and crossing certain things off until she gets until she gets back to the Two Rivers, and then she finds Rand there. But you're right, because I mean, it's even mentioned in that chapter, Rand's taller than the other boys and he doesn't look much like the other boys, so one of these things is not like the other.
Yeah, and it's either the Dark Friends, the Ravens, the Forsaken, everyone who is aligned with the Dark One, they are either not operating on the same information that Moraine has, because she's got a little bit more because she was in the room when Guittara had the foretelling.
Yep.
So I think everything else has come to the Dark Friends from secondhand knowledge.
Yeah.
So they don't have an equal playing field, I guess. But man, I mean, this is just what's crazy to me is when Moraine shows up, she has to know immediately. You know, she knows.
Yeah. I think that she knows, and as she's asking the questions about like birth dates, it narrows everything down for her. And I mean, I don't think that that's like a subtle point in the plot, but like her asking about ages for people. And I mean, I think it makes so much more sense having read New Spring to know why Moraine is there. Mm-hmm. But when you're just reading it for the first time, this beautiful woman shows up with this crazy, strong, badass looking guy with a cloak that fades into stuff behind him. Like,
and if we go back to the prophecies from the Carathian cycle, it's not explicit that, oh, like, look for this Aiel boy, you know?
Right.
So, yeah, he's different, but she's operating on the age more than the look, I guess, right?
I would think so. Yeah.
But I feel like looking at him would just, you know what I mean? Like,
would just kind of give it away.
Right, right. And even Morghese is like, why is an Aiel man standing here in front of me? And he's like, I'm not Aiel.
Yeah. That happens to him over and over and over again. Like, you're a tall one, or how'd they let you on this side of the dragon wall or whatever it is, you know?
And Moraine is so clever. I mean, I feel like she would just look at him and be like, okay. Like,
you.
Yeah, this is... Yeah, it was during the Aiel War that she was looking for this boy. You know, there would have been Aiel scattered about the lands. And to come across this boy that looks Aiel in this little farming community would be a major what?
Yeah, neon sign.
Yeah.
Look here. Yeah. So we were talking about the appearance of ravens. During this moment, Perrin is introduced to Master Luhan. This is when he becomes apprenticed to him, which of course is important because Perrin becomes a blacksmith. Nynaeve is recently orphaned at this point, which I found really interesting. I didn't realize that. I didn't know like the timeline of the loss of her parents. I knew that she was mostly raised by her father, but I didn't realize that.
Does it say what happened to her parents or just that they had died?
I think Egwene says something about how she had been recently orphaned, but I don't remember if it said what the reason was.
Yeah, I feel like that speaks a lot to how Nynaeve is kind of like this surrogate mother figure to all of these kids when they're, in her eyes, taken off, like kidnapped.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Like she has this responsibility. I'm sure that's like something that would tug at her heartstrings, you know?
Oh, definitely. Without a question. That is Nynaeve 100%.
She's just not the greatest at conveying
Her communication
emotions.
skills.
It just comes off as anger.
So true.
Feistiness.
So true. So even as an apprentice, people think she's too young. And my response to that is, Nynaeve is always too young. Poor Nynaeve. She's always too young.
Just wants that gray hair, so everyone will leave her alone.
So badly. And how long is that going to take? A century? I mean, she's already started the slowing process, so she's not aging quickly anytime soon.
Yes.
I just think that that's almost comical, even though I'm sure it's frustrating. The connection to land of them both being orphans, just in different ways, stuck out to me. And this moment, Nynaeve is wrapping, she's the apprentice, the old wisdom is still alive. Nynaeve is wrapping this bandage up, and the wisdom is like crouched over her, watching her every move. And Egwene is observing this, and she's like, why is the wisdom watching her so closely? Like, she usually is always praising how fast Nynaeve is at doing everything and how good she is at it. But then when Nynaeve finishes, the wisdom looks at her and then looks at the bandage and then undoes the bandage and even lifts up the bread poultice. New spring, thank you.
The bread poultice.
Right? Can't forget about that. Lifts it up and looks at the wound, and Egwene thinks that maybe she looks disappointed, but she doesn't understand why the wisdom would look disappointed with what Nynaeve has done. And it's because the wisdom knows Nynaeve can channel, even though she hasn't told Nynaeve and Nynaeve doesn't know it, and she's keeping an eye out for it. And I was like, oh, yeah. Because I mean, it doesn't explain that, but all of those little hints, I'm just like, have some foreshadowing, everyone. Here's a little extra for you. Like, it was just the whole way through. And then Nynaeve sensing Egwene standing behind her. Like, that also indicates Egwene has touched the one power for the first time, and she has lived through it. And now Nynaeve and Egwene have the connection that they speak of later on in the books, and Moraine explains why as well. You had mentioned the gendering of pets and animals, and one of the things that was also like blinker blinker was her walking by dogs. Like, it happens a couple times where she's like, I don't like that dog, but like
she says she reacts to her.
Yeah, she says she did not like dogs very much, and they did not seem to care for her either. And I'm like, it's because
dogs don't like channelers or female channelers,
right? And I was just like, oh, hey. Rand, so when she goes over and she spies on the boys to see what they're doing, Rand is like, I'm going to be a king. And I laugh.
More foreshadowing.
Right? And Egwene is like, yeah, but he was kind of awkward afterwards, like making it seem like a joke or whatever. But it was just really funny because this is the spoiler section. I don't have to tell you why it's funny that Rand would say that he's going to be the king. It just is. Matt says that he's going to rescue an Aes Sedai and she will reward him. And his remark,
wow.
Right?
But this is also strange because later on I don't remember what chapter it is, Matt's talking about Aes Sedai again. And yeah, there's a lot going on.
So much. And I think this is the most Matt way to introduce Matt ever. In the book, it says, I don't go around looking for work when there's more than work enough without looking. And I was like, yep, that's... But
I feel you, Matt. I feel you.
Me too. But the thing that really stuck out to me in that one is Matt saying he would rescue an Aes Sedai. Like, it's not that he's going to do something malevolent. He's going to rescue someone. And like, for Matt being the mischief maker, the trickster, it's sometimes easy to forget that he's always putting his neck on the line because of his ridiculous levels of loyalty and sense of duty, which he keeps trying to pretend doesn't exist.
Well, that speaks to him also not wanting to look for more work than already needs to be there because he knows his morals. So if he comes across something that has to be done because it's morally right, He'll to do it. So he's like, if I just keep my eyes down and I don't see it, I won't have to act.
That's
like,
why he hides.
That's
why he hides next to the wagon in chapter 1 instead of walking up to Rand, because he's like, they're gonna make us work. Let's get out of here.
Yeah.
But then when Tam is like, oh, Matt, you're here to help Rand, he's like, oh, well, I was supposed to. And Tam's like, no, you aren't. He very easily could have chosen to be disrespectful, but he wasn't. It's just, there's so many levels to Matt, and I really like him. When Tam offers to be the storyteller instead of Bran, someone mentioned something about the Aiel War, and Egwene observes, for a moment, Egwene thought Master Althor's face changed. For an instant, he seemed hard enough to make the merchant's guards look soft. And I was just
God, I want that Tam New Spring prequel book. That would have been so cool.
It would have been so cool. And I just really, I loved that little observation for what it is and who Tam is. And I had to share that with you because I know, like, you haven't read that chapter and we have to remedy that at some point. But it really was just, like, so much foreshadowing. But also, like, these little fill-in of holes, like Perrin with his family, when you know what happens to his family, and him like picking up his sister and swinging her around, and you know, like just these
tender moments.
Yeah, it was really sweet. So yeah, those were just some of the things from Ravens, and I think now we can move on to the prologue.
Okay, so I kind of mentioned it earlier, but there's something about the prologue that I just, it doesn't grab my attention. Maybe it's because I have like a really short attention span.
That's me too.
As I reread it, I was able to kind of figure out what I didn't like about it. And I think it just comes down to the fact of Lews Therin Telamon being unlikable. And this is only because of the information that I am given without any knowledge of why. So Robert Jordan tells us, okay, this man is a killer. He's deep inside like this like thrall of madness. And we're not given any information about his previous self. So I have to give this information like at face value. Okay. Secondly,
I just want to say that's a really good point.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not trying to be like, oh, I don't like him because he's mad. It's because I didn't know that there was a history behind this. I didn't know why this happened. I was given nothing from Lews Therin's point of view because he doesn't remember. So
and he's not seeing it.
Right. And then secondly, oh my gosh. So on my second read, I cannot get the images of Winter Dragon out of my head. And I know you've never seen it, but
actually I did watch it.
Oh,
I did
you
watch
did?
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's so goofy. Like it's so goofy. And so now when I'm reading Lews Therin Telamon, I can only picture these characters from Winter Dragon, and I'm just like, I just can't deal with this. So thank you, Winter's Dragon. You have ruined things for me.
You didn't like Billy Zane? You weren't feeling him?
It's just so silly. Yeah. So I think when Lews Therin is confronted by a Shamael, I almost lean more towards having sympathy from a Shamael because he's like, look what you did. Like, you killed everyone.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, well, who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy? And maybe that's kind of where my understanding and feelings towards the prologue came from, where I wasn't able to really gauge, you know, who do I trust here, and why is it important, and what's the backstory. So when we're looking too at Lews Therin, this is something that I was thinking about the other night, and it was right after I had read it, I started typing out notes immediately because it was fresh and I wanted to like get into it. And I'm thinking of all of the things that I know now of Lews Therin, how when he's in Rand's mind and he keeps humming when he sees a pretty woman. And I'm just like, that is creepy. Like, it makes me feel like icky,
cringy.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah. And going on the thoughts of taking everything at face value, is it possible that maybe we are, as readers, kind of trapped in the idea that Lews Therin is the good guy, the Forsaken are all the bad guys, because we only get the side from the winners, because the Forsaken are all locked away in the you know, in the Bore. So they weren't able to say like what happened with Lews Therin.
This is my side of the story.
Yeah. And Lews Therin has done a lot of stuff that is like, it's questionable, because what's the name of the female Aes Sedai? Latra, I think. The one that opposed Lews Therin's big attack at Shale Ghul, and where she talked all the other Aes Sedai out of joining him. So then it's just Lews Therin with his companions, his 100 companions. And I'm kind of just left wondering, like, why was he so opposed? Why do all of these Forsaken rather side with the Dark One because they hate this man so much? And even the Aes Sedai are like, nope. So I don't know if he just...
That's a good point.
I don't know if he just had this... Maybe he was just kind of... not a terrible person, but just kind of annoying person.
Well, and incredibly full of himself.
Right. And he's the strongest, so that would make sense.
Yeah.
And anyone that kind of seems to oppose him is either like, oh, well, you opposed me because you would rather be on the side of the Dark One, you're evil. And that's what we're led to believe, is that all of these Forsaken would rather join the Dark One. And it's like questionable. Is it because they were actually all bad guys? Some of them were power hungry too and wanted something out of it. And some of them were just like, yeah, I really didn't like Lews Therin.
It's true. That's true.
And then that made me question a lot of things about Lanfear as well. Because, I mean, is it possible that maybe Lews Therin kind of led her on? She's the most beautiful woman that anyone has ever seen.
Right?
Maybe he like ghosted her and then perpetuated some type of crazy ex-girlfriend stereotype, you know?
I love that idea too.
I was on Twitter the other day, and I swear to you, I read this, I woke up, opened Twitter, looked at it, and I just started laughing because T-Brain on Twitter wrote, I've long had a theory that Lews was a jerk. I think he gaslit and manipulated Lanfear till she went crazy, because who acts like that about an ex thousands of years later? Not to mention everyone who turned to the Shadow because they hate him. On top of that, the female Aes Sedai, and she goes on to talk about the female Aes Sedai at the time, and I messaged her and I was like, oh my God, I'm not the only one. So we kind of chatted about that for a second. So I think it's entirely possible.
Yeah, and I think we even like talked about that when we did our section on the Forsaken of like, what the fuck is wrong with Lanfear that she's still holding this grudge against a guy who like...
Because we're like, you're better than that. Get over him.
Yeah. Have you not seen yourself? You sound amazing. Like, she was the strongest. Every time, like, people talk, like, after Rand encounters Selene, he's like, Elaine just seems mildly pretty in comparison. So like we're always like reinforced with this idea of like her just being this like gorgeous human
Stunning.
being. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
what
she wasn't
a good point.
And she wasn't necessarily evil. I mean, she was just curious, like, okay, like what is this,
She
power?
was power hungry.
She was, yeah, but it was also
Which, I
from a
mean-
point of curiosity as well, because when channeling, the channeler's abilities are broken down again into gender, she's like,
Yeah.
well, you know what? Like, maybe I want to be stronger than these men, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, why not? Like, and I mean, the thing is her attachment to Luce Theron was about power, but it does seem as though she actually loved him as well. And I mean, I get that idea where you could become totally fixated on what could have been. Like,
And it is left so vague that we can really question everything, I feel like.
Oh my God. My brain is racing. That doesn't mean it makes any sense. It just means it's moving really fast.
Yeah.
Wow.
The only like other real thing that I took away from this prologue is where did I write it down? I've lost my place.
Lord of the Morning?
No.
Lucifer? No.
Oh yeah, that's more about, okay, this is also on the wiki that there is a connection, like Luce Theron sounds like Lucifer. And when I was thinking about Lucifer, it's Lucifer Morningstar, and he's being called Lord of the Morning.
Right.
And I'm like, Luz, Lord of the Morning, Lucifer Morningstar. Okay, that's weird. So just another thing to reinforce, like, maybe he wasn't a good guy.
Good point. Good point.
But all of that aside, something that did kind of interest me is...
I'm so sorry. I just read over your note. He is always screaming at Rand to kill people.
Right, yeah, Luce Theron. Why are you always screaming to kill everyone? Does that sound like a good guy quality to you?
It's not even like a... So how do you feel about so-and-so? It's kill them now. Like insistent exclamation points in italics, like kill them. Oh man, I just figured it was his madness. I mean, in some
I'm
ways
sure
it might
some
be,
of it
but
is, but
maybe he was just a dick.
But I really liked here how when Ishamael talks to Luce Theron, he says something to the lines of, well, this healing isn't going to be like something you're used to. And when he heals Luce Theron, the pain is described as like searing heat, kind of like burning, in comparison to how when we see an Aes Sedai heal in the Third Age, it's something like being plunged into ice water. And so I was just wondering, does that mean that healing from the true power is hot or that it hurts? Because he says it's different. So I'm just like, is it just both?
It could... At first I was just thinking it's because he's using, what is it, the true power from the Dark One. But maybe it's both. I mean, he does say he's not very good at it. So maybe this just isn't, this is him like...
Like, I really would believe if he wanted to make it painful, just, because
could.
he's healing him just to hurt him anyways, just so he can see what he's done.
It's true.
And so there's that. But does that mean that all healing from the true power is painful, or just that it's hot instead of cold?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
But it's a good question.
Random. If anyone knows, anyone have any ideas?
Yeah, I'd love to hear more speculation on this, because I there don't really seem to be that many benefits to the true power, It
seems like it makes people stronger,
Yeah, but all of the Forsaken / Chosen talk about how like touching it too often or for too long can be damaging to them, and like Moradin developed those saw things that like roll across his vision, those black dots. That sounds pretty not great. Like, I just
No.
yeah, and
Like
I
when
mean,
you stand up too fast and you see those little floating.
that happens to me at least once a day.
Hate that.
Me too. Yeah, that is something to be pondered. Some of the things that kind of jumped out to me for the prologue was the movement of stone and how that gets used later on, because it mentions how like people had sunken into the stone of the palace, and it happened because the stone had flowed like a river throughout the palace. And then that happens in, is it Towers of...
Yeah, where the physics just start to stop making sense.
Yeah, and it happens with Leanne and Egwene after they've been captured, and Leanne's in the prison cell, and like her prison, like the floor starts to go soft, and she's trying to hold on to the bars, and the bars are melting away, and somehow she gets pulled out of it and she's okay. But like when it stops, like she's flaking like stone flecks off of her dress because now it's hardened again. So she could have been trapped there. And the idea of something like that is terrifying. But then it gets used again with the man in the wagon. And I don't remember which book this is in, but like Matt's traveling with the band, and I think he might still be with Val and Luca's show. But as they're like traveling, or they pulled off to the side of the road for some reason, like a wagon comes behind them.
Man, I see, this is the stuff I love though, because it is just creepy enough.
It's so dark.
Yeah.
Like Matt knows he can't do anything in that moment. Like that man is going to die, and it's Matt, and this is going to really bother him, and it does.
All of the bubble of evil type scenarios are just crazy. And I think that's one of the things I'm really excited to see how the show approaches, if they do approach it.
I want to see how they do Rand in his bedchamber in Tyr, with all of the reflections of Rand everywhere, and the tiny... I want to see the tiny one that like does a little dagger in the back of his hand, and it's a little tiny pinprick. Like, I want to see that. Little tiny Rands spreading around. Okay, sorry.
I wonder if they will even try to approach that though. I mean, it just... Stuff like stone melting and stuff like that, I mean, okay. But when you're trying to make a miniature person stab you, it's like, that almost might be kind of funny. Like, hey, look at me, poke, poke.
I'm down here. I can't even do a high-pitched voice right now. I'm down here. You big bully. Okay, I just sound like an old woman. I'm going to stop.
You kind of sounded like Flava Flav, to be honest.
I will take that as a compliment.
Boy.
Thank you. Ooh, it's going to be that kind of day. So I thought that was interesting that it's something that's like terrifying enough to bring back again later on, because it is like really dark and kind of haunting and like sits with you.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the things that I caught that I hadn't ever caught before is when Luce Theron asks Ishamael if he has the voice, which made me think of the Tuatha always searching for the song, but also like Rand's flashback sequence where he's like going through the lives of the Aiel, and he sees like in the Age of Legends men singing and the Nym joining them, and possibly Ogier. Is that right? Like, I feel like they would all like hang out together in this big group and sing to the fields.
See, I just thought that meant like, oh, are you hearing voices too?
The insanity in me recognizes the insanity in you.
Hello. Hi.
I love that. No, that actually, like, I've never thought about that before, but like, it's one of those things that I don't know. That almost feels like a potential dropped plot line where, like, we never find the song for the Tuathon, and where did it even start? And was it always the song, or maybe it was the voice? Like, just thoughts.
I feel like now I'm thinking of that TV show, The Voice, where it's like a song challenge, and I'm just picturing Tuathon up on stage.
I'm seeing Loyal, like, standing up with, like, a sapling. Like, he's...
No, it's like open mic night for Loyal. He's just speaking, like, some spoken word poetry. It's
snapping
really
his
long.
fingers.
He looks up from above the page, and there's no one left.
Or they're all, like...
They had all gone
slumped
home.
over. That's so
I would
good.
stay and watch Loyal. I promise. I
might bring my own book to read, but I'll at least glance up every once in a while and encourage you. One of the things, like, and this actually kind of ties back to what you were talking about, is like, what is the character of Luce Theron, and is it what we're kind of maybe led to believe, that he's like a champion for the light? I mean, that's what Tam refers to him as. But for all of this, like, he can't handle his grief. He can't handle what he has done. And he, like you said, he basically goes off and goes nuclear and kills himself, creates Dragon Mount in the process, and actually the island that will become Tarvalon. It feels entirely appropriate for Rand to come and face his personal crazy in the place where Luce Theron gave in to his.
Yeah, I feel like as soon as he was there, it all clicked, and then and then the two became one.
Yeah.
You know, like, he was already seeing so much of things through Luce Theron's eyes and words, and then once he got there, it was like, okay, and now merged.
Yeah, and I get it. I'm insane. I acknowledge that, and now we shall move forward, and things will not be quite as crazy.
Moving forward. Chapter 1.
Chapter 1. Bella!
Bella is back.
No, I don't think people will understand how much they're going to love Bella when she's first mentioned in Chapter 1. Because she's just the horse, you know? She knows the route better than they do. Really, that was all I wanted to say about that. Unless you want to, like, jump in with some Bella love.
I love Bella. There. I said it.
Perfect. Don't feel bad about it, Amber. We all do.
There's so many pretty ponies in this series. We've got lots of horses. They're nice.
I don't know
I still
if
like Arrow a lot, though.
Which one is Arrow?
That was Moraine's horse in New Spring that everyone tried to steal.
She even had, like, the horse alarm for her horse.
Yeah.
Right? For some reason, I'm, like, pressing my button like I would for my car, but that's how it felt.
Nay. I'm cutting myself off now. We have to move forward.
I have so many questions around this. The questions that I have are, how and why is Nynaeve chosen for wisdom when she is so young? And
Clearly,
I think
because she's awesome. No.
that's the best answer.
And
I
too,
think
I'm
it's
sure,
true.
like how you pointed out, the current wisdom probably noticed her channeling capabilities and was like, okay, she will be able to heal people.
Yeah, like, she made the most sense to the person who would know what to look for. And it's so bizarre how channeling is so prevalent in the Two Rivers, and yet everybody seems to kind of deny the fact that it even exists. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. To me, that's just kind of, it's just interesting.
And too, how it's funny and it's cute, but it's also, you want to shake them because these kids in the Two Rivers are so far removed from everything that even though we get story time with Tam and we know a little bit about these legends and Aes Sedai and Lews Therin, something that stood out to me is Matt saw the rider too, and they're all like guessing like what it might be, and they're like, is it the Dark One? Is it the dragon? Is it Agenor? And it's like, these kids, man.
Well,
they've got it all mixed up. They're all mixed up.
They are, but at the same time, like, what would the Shepherd of the Night be doing in the Two Rivers watching Farm Boys? What indeed, Matt? And then the other one was, my mother always said the Forsaken would come for me if I didn't mend my ways. But the Forsaken are coming for you, Matt. They are on their way. Like,
right. They've got an idea, but they still aren't quite sure about it, because at one point they're saying how Aes Sedai are evil and they caused the breaking. And like, we know from the Ravens chapter that Tam just explained how it happened. So why the heck are you still talking all this crazy stuff, kids? Like, come on. Someone needs to give these kids a history lesson.
They should listen to our podcast.
They'd probably be even more confused.
I love it. I think the only thing that I want to point out is that in chapter 1, we may have one of the few moments where Sen Bui is actually right when he says, there's worse to come, you mark my words. Like, he's right. He's right.
I read on until chapter 3, and he has another moment like that where
Does
I'm like,
he?
why is Sen Bui the only one making sense right now? He's not wrong. But you have to realize that there is something seriously not right going on, and people should be afraid, because how unsettling would it be to the point where your spring crops should already be growing and it is still winter and dark and bleak and freezing. Like, that is some type of, I'm saying this as someone who gets like maybe a couple months of sunlight every year. Like, it's unsettling and it's awful.
Aww.
You wanna celebrate, you know, when spring comes. And if that didn't happen and you're waiting months and months and spring never comes, you'd be feeling really weird.
Yeah. Perpetual winter does not sound great. I think that's all I have for chapter 1. Did you have anything on that one?
Mostly, I think everything that we covered, and the fact that everyone is trying to gang up on Nynaeve, which I think is awful. And something that I thought was really funny is Rand kind of like internally to himself bragging about traveling to the foot of the mountains of mist right after he's acknowledging to himself how scared he is for wanting to be close to his dad after he sees the rider. So it was kind of like he was unknowingly giving himself a little pep talk because he sees the rider and he's like, ooh, scary. And he's like, well, I've been all the way to the foot of the mountains of mist. And
if I can do that, I can do anything.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, you kids, man.
They are. It is so bizarre coming back from the end to the beginning. Like, when I've reread these in the past, 1, I hadn't ever read all the way to the ending before. And 2, I was generally really young when I was reading these. And so I wasn't seeing and understanding everything that was in front of me either. So,
question. This is another thing, and I think I've asked it before, and I don't remember what the answer is, but the Myrddraal that Rand sees is riding a horse. Do we get Myrddraal on horseback later on throughout the series, or is that not a thing? I really feel like I've only seen them like hand-to-hand combat, not like...
I don't know.
Riding off on a horse somewhere. I feel like the horse would freak out, right? Unless it was a Trolloc horse. I mean, wouldn't a normal horse be like bucking this Myrddraal off its back? Like, get off of me.
Oh, I don't know because I'm trying to think through like moments and battle moments and things, and it's just not coming clear enough to know for
Right.
sure.
That's how I'm thinking too, because
But I mean, I would imagine that they would need to be in order to have like height on the Trollocs.
well, they can command the Trollocs without needing any. They're
Yeah,
like bonded to the Trollocs. They kind of like command them, and then once the Merjal dies, the Trollocs die anyways.
That's true. I don't know.
People who are smarter than us, let us know.
Please, before we spend the rest of our morning trying to decide if Murdral ride horses. That's good.
Because if it's the only time, yeah, that might be a little bit of a dropped plot line. But
yeah.
also, just another random observation. It said that the Congers and Coplands are so intermarried that they don't even know where one family starts and the other ends. And I was just thinking like, oh no, some of those Congers and Coplands are probably going to start having some genetic diseases soon.
Didn't we talk about that? Oh
yeah, not too long ago in Manetheren.
Yeah.
And then I did also think that it was interesting how all of the women in Emmonsfield are so thirsty to marry off their single friends to Tam.
It's so true.
To the point where Rand even receives little gifts like, oh, have you tried my pie? It's not nearly as good as my widowed sister can make.
Yeah.
And, yeah. And
wink, wink.
Yeah. Tam is the most eligible bachelor of Emmonsfield. Love it. He's got that. He's an archery champion. He's got a farm.
He's on the village council.
Got a nice kid.
Yep.
What's not to love?
Nothing.
So, chapter 2?
Yeah.
I love starting out how we get the story of Matt's ghost hound and immediately having issues with Master Luhan.
It's so funny.
I also love that Master Luhan is described as being roped with muscle. And I'm just like, okay, so how hot are all of these people in Emmonsfield, honestly?
They do all sound rather good looking.
Nynaeve is beautiful. Egwene is beautiful. Rand, super tall, wide shoulders. Like, all of these people are 10s, I feel like.
Yeah.
Except for maybe Zenbui and the Congers and Coplands.
Yeah. There are a few not so pretty people thrown in just to make the extra pretty people feel extra good about themselves. Balance, remember?
Right. Balance. Clearly.
That's what it's all about.
Another thing that's really interesting is the village council. They're all kind of chilling and smoking a pipe, and they won't say anything in front of Rand and Matt. And he's like, they're being very quiet and acting like they have nothing to do. But they have to know who Moraine and Lan are, right? Like, Lan's wearing his color-changing cloak.
He is wearing his war
Tam's
cloak, yeah.
been around in the world, you know?
He would know.
Right? So I feel like maybe the village council is really trying to pretend like business as usual, everything's okay. And then there's also the fact that the peddler hasn't shown up yet, but when he does, there will be even more things for the village council to talk about.
Indeed.
Despite Moraine and Lan, who I feel like these big outsiders should have the women's circle and the village council on their toes.
Yeah.
And then little Elwyn Fingar. He is probably the most observant person in the Two Rivers, and I think he deserves some recognition because as soon as he is standing there with Matt and Rand. He's like, so here's the deal. This woman, she's beautiful. She's a real lady. She's with this guy. He's got a color-changing cloak, and I'm pretty sure he's her servant, but not really a servant, but he works for her, and he refers to her. And I'm like, damn, kid, you know more about what's going on than pretty much like some of the grown-ups. So shout out to this kid.
No kidding.
I think his character too is just really cute because they're kind of like, get away from me, like little boy, even though he's, I think, 14 or something.
Yeah, he's just slightly younger than they are, but that gap can feel really big.
Right. They're treating him kind of like as a little nuisance. And I just thought that was kind of cute.
It is. It's a really good observation because I hadn't really thought about it.
And then I said that I would talk about this because he talks exactly about what color Moraine's clothes are like. And then we get to see her when she shows up. And she's wearing a light blue dress, like blue like the sky, he says. And I was just thinking back to New Spring when she's thinking like, ugh, a light colored blue for traveling in. And I'm like, uh-oh, Moraine, like what seamstress did you piss off where you have to wear this light blue dress because we know that is not good. Right? It was light colors were the ones that weren't
so, yeah.
nice.
Yeah,
right?
she was like she knew her first batch of dresses that she would pick up from the seamstress would all be the light blue ones. Right. She knew it because she knew that she'd made the seamstress mad.
Yeah. And then I also found it interesting that Moraine is actually going by her real name.
I thought the same thing.
Okay, good.
I was like, and she's
no
wearing
Mistress
her ring.
Alice. Yeah, no Mistress Alice and wearing the ring.
I was like, oh. It was, yeah, because I mean, most of the time she travels kind of in secret, but maybe she just felt that she was in a place so remote from anywhere that might know who she is, possibly. I don't know. Like, I honestly don't know what she was expecting when she came into the Two Rivers. So.
Me either. And I think it's also interesting that her and Nynaeve kind of have this little face-off where she calls her child. But I'm almost wondering if Nynaeve had noticed something more to her. You know, like maybe maybe since she can channel, she felt something different about this woman. So it just has her on guard, you know?
I think that is possible. Because I don't remember. I mean, she would have been able to channel for quite some time at that point. So she would be at that point with her skills where she should be able to recognize, even if she wouldn't consciously know it, another woman who could channel.
Yeah, maybe she's just like, yeah, there's something going on with her.
Yeah.
She can feel it, maybe. And again, you had put this, and I put this in my notes too, about compulsion light. Because we've brought it up before, where Rand has kind of said, upon meeting Moraine, he's like, in this moment, you know, he would do if she asked, he would do something for her.
Yeah.
And he just wanted to be near her. And I'm like, ooh, Moraine.
What are you doing?
Right. But I also think that this could possibly be the first instance of Rand channeling, because he's able to break from that awkward, not knowing what to say to her, to immediately and feeling like he would do anything for her, to feeling 100% sure of himself to be like, and what are you doing here in the Two Rivers? And I feel like, did he just kind of like push her weave away somehow and just like sidestep it? Like, that would be crazy, right?
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, it also could be possibly to Viren.
Right.
And I mean, there is like the fact that the Two Rivers folk are like super stubborn. And so if it's just like a mild form of compulsion, like...
Yeah, he's kind of like in this little like daydream, like, oh, look at this coin, and oh, like I'll do what she says. And
Yeah.
I feel like a big giant buffoon next to this petite little woman, and he can barely talk to her and string together a sentence to having the fortitude to being like, what are you doing here? Curious.
I love the curious moments. I think the only thing I was going to add was just, and I think we've kind of touched on this a little bit, is just how perfect of a place this is to hide Rand. Like for as long as he could be hidden and to become the person he needed to be at the end of the series. It's mentioned that outsiders don't really like coming to the Two Rivers, and when they do, they don't stay. And I mean, it's remote to the point that Tam doesn't even live in the village. He lives in a farm outside of the village limits in the Westwood or whatever it's called. And so like there could not possibly be a better spot for Rand. He's almost like in this little pocket of isolation.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And it's so hidden that many of the people that live there don't even know the real history of it. Like these people who live there don't even know that it's Manetheren.
Yeah.
Like they literally don't know. I think Moraine says something. What was it? She's saying like she was collecting stories and stuff about history or whatever. And Matt is like, what could ever be important about this place? Yeah. And he's like, well, maybe she's wanting to check out the inn. You know, the inn is nearly 1,000 years old. I'm like, is that just like hyperbole, or is it really
old? 1,000 years old?
Right. And it's just kind of like, okay, well, it is really a secluded kind of secret spot if the people who have lived there for generations don't even know what's the meaning, what's the history to it.
Yeah.
And they're just cute. Like, Matt's adorable. He's like, the Two Rivers has always been the Two Rivers. And it's like, aw.
Aren't you cute?
Right. And then we've got Elwyn, who is like, well, I think Lan is her warder. And Matt's like, bullshit. Like, and it's like, come on, this little kid knows more about the world than anyone. What is going on right now?
Yeah, because like Matt's like, is he covered in jewels? Warders are always covered in jewels, you fool. Like, Matt? You're going to feel real silly later.
Yeah. Agreed.
I think, the only thing that I wanted to like add to this is, in this series in particular, anyone who says it's going to be the best fill in the blank ever.
I was going to say that. Strangers, fireworks, a peddler, a gleeman. It was going to be the best Beltane ever. That was a lie.
Nope. And so that's...
We've got a lot of stuff happening, and I'm even more excited for next week because...
Yay!
Yeah, it's going to be good.
It's going to be good. We did good today. We covered a lot of stuff.
I'm feeling hype about it.
Me too. I'm excited because now I can go outside and... I haven't moved forward with reading, mostly because I've been reading so much for work and whatnot. And I've been trying to, like, continue reading in The Expanse, but now I'm going to go sit outside and start reading chapter 3. Anyway, so next week we're talking chapters 3, 4, 5, and 6. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Cool.
Thanks so much for joining us. We will continue to release new episodes every Wednesday. We would love if you would subscribe to the podcast, leave us reviews, and share us with your friends.
Let us know what you thought of our content. Correct us. Send us things we may have missed. You can find links to our email and social media accounts in the show notes. And if you have the Anchor app, leave a voice message for us to play in upcoming episodes. We also have a Discord channel. Just find us on any of our social media platforms and we can send you an invite.
So until next week,
thanks for joining us on the road to Tar Valon.